Hello everyone, my name is Naeem Bashir of Identity Hybrid LLC based out of the DC, Maryland, and Virginia areas, and this is my ISSA Strength and Conditioning Final Exam video submission. For this particular video, I'm going to be using myself as the athlete, as I currently am still a semi-professional athlete, and I'm going to be using one of my preseason training days, one of my format based on improving endurance, as well as heavy on lower body functionality, as well as lower body loading. So there will be some components of supersets, combining two workouts simultaneously and then having decently long rest periods for recovery. But a lot of it is based on developing power, building on power to make sure that it is sustainable throughout the competitive season period, which we are currently getting ready to approach in the next couple of weeks, as well as building on essence of explosivity, as well as strength. It's very important during the competitive season that you're not burning out, as well as reducing risk of injury prior to the season starting, as well as the season carrying through. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and let's get to it. All right, everybody, welcome to the warm-ups. Here, as we're being demonstrated, there are a couple of dynamic warm-ups that we're going to use to open up the hips, as a lot of our lower body movements are going to revolve around hip hinge movement. What you just saw was the A skip, focusing on driving the knees and unlocking the hips. From here, we move into an alternate version of the A skips, where we're focusing essentially on the same movements or mechanisms that track and field athletes use when getting over hurdles. Again, we want to emphasize as much as possible the opening of the hips, so that way when we get ready to move and progress into our lower body movements, we're moving and able to perform and maximize our load capacity, as well as our movement and full functionality. From here, we move into external hip rotations, as we just saw. Want to make sure that we get the external hips, or the hip extensors rather, fully engaged, fully functional, warmed up, working, moving. And then from there, we want to work the internal hips, so the abductors as well as the adductors. We want them moving and flowing, pumping as much as possible. From there, we move into an A-skip variation, where we work both the abductors and adductors on a single leg, applied with a skipping motion. Here, we're just trying to boost up the heart rate a little bit, get our body warm a little bit, so that way when we move into the second part of our warm-ups, we're moving soundly and comfortably without any risk of injury. From here, we move into a 4 to 5 minute jog, relatively light tempo and pace. For me, a jog tempo is generally between about a 6 to 6.5. Generally, this is supposed to be light and easy, trying to boost up your heart rate, moving it closer to that cardio zone. And again, what we're trying to do is gradually build into a larger maximum consumption capacity, boosting up our VO2 max, again, spiking up that heart rate gradually, so that way when we build into our first official workout for the day, which is based on endurance, we want to make sure that we're able to transition to that smoothly. So here we have 12-minute intervals, and the way that this works is there's 4 sets. You have 4 sets of 1-minute runs, which you are going to offset with 2-minute recovery runs, or per se jogs. So essentially what you're going to do here for your 1-minute runs is go up to about 60 to 70% of whatever your max speed is. Here I'm at a 8.5, between 8.5/9, generally adjusting, and then from there I'm going to drop down into that jogging zone. for 2 minutes. And again, after each set, this is how you're transitioning. So it's 1 minute at a decent pace, in a run zone. Again, it's not your max speed, it's not a sprint. Again, we're just trying to boost up that heart rate, and we're trying to transition between spiking it up and dropping it down. And here we take our recovery. So from here, the emphasis should be breathing in through your nose, out to your mouth, bringing the heart rate down slightly, just getting relaxed, getting comfortable with that sweat, making sure that everything is feeling good. If you need to drop down in speed, then do so, just so you can get nice recovery. But then also you want to, at this point, you should be feeling the hips fully open, fully engaged, fully functioning, and from there we continue to transition between sets after 2 minutes. Now here, the last 2 sets are going to be 70 to 80% of my max speed. So here I want to get to about a 10.0/10.5 miles per hour. Get nice and comfortable, and I transition this back into my jog once I've concluded my minute. Here we have mobility routines. So these are wall-assisted knee drives. The emphasis on this should be to, again, fully get the hips engaging and flowing, just in case there are some other movements. These are about strengthening up the hips, so that way they have the capacity to be able to load, explode, generate force and or power. So here I'm using the mirror, trying to elongate my trunk, keep my trunk stable, keep my spine stable, engage my core with these movements here. And the only thing that I want to engage are those hip muscles. I want to drive them up and down. And here I want to transition between 2 sets of 8 repetitions on each side. Again, that's 2 sets of 8 repetitions on each side. And these are essentially a superset, so we are not going to take a rest period for this one, as we're going to transition into our second routine. Here we have hip extensions in a downward facing motion, palms down. Palms should not be extended past the shoulder. Again, the trunk should be leveled. Everything should be leveled from the hips all the way to the shoulders. Nothing should be elevated. Our shoulders should be nice and relaxed, core engaged, and the only thing that we are focusing on is extending and engaging those hip extensors. And that's what we want to focus on. Again, these are nice controlled motions. Only thing that we are focusing on is moving that one particular muscle group. Everything stays nice and tight and engaged, and we're breathing through to make sure that we have full control of our body throughout. From here, we move into our lower body portion. Now here we have the seated leg press. I'm about at between 60 to 70% of my max rep on a seated leg press. These are 3 sets of 15. Again, this is a moderate weight, nothing too heavy, but nothing too light. The emphasis is focusing on pushing from the heels, nice and controlled, making sure that we're keeping the trunk long and elevated, breathing through, and we're really driving from those heels and pushing off. These are attached to a superset, which means that we are now going to transition into body weight squat jumps. And for these, again, similar to the seated leg press, we're doing 3 sets of 15 repetitions. Now, after your superset is done, you've done 1 set of the seated leg press and 1 set of the body weight squat jumps. You are then going to proceed to take a 60 to 90 second rest period. After the 3 sets are done of the seated leg press and the body weight squat jumps, we transition to another superset where we have single leg lunges, as well as single leg step ups. Now the lunges and the step ups, we are going to transition or drop down to 2 sets of 15 repetitions for each leg. That is 2 sets of 15 repetitions for each leg. And again, once we've finished one leg, we immediately go into the next leg of our 15. And we want to make sure that we're nice and evenly balanced from the shoulders down to the knee. Should be one nice long line. We're not jerking our body, jerking our knee. Our knee is not collapsing into the ground. And we're making sure that our body is nice controlled as we force power and push off and explode up. From there, we move into our step-ups. These are going to be weighted step-ups with dumbbells. For these, I used 25 pounds of weight or 25-pound dumbbells. Again, here we want to make sure that we are nice and controlled. We're pushing up and elevating off of the heels. And we want to make sure that as we're coming down, it's nice and controlled and we're not just letting our body fall back to the ground. From here, we want to make sure that the core is engaged. It's nice, controlled movements. We're pushing up and we want to engage both the quadriceps as well as the gluteus muscles and the hamstrings. Nice and tight. Make sure that we're feeling those glute muscles flex, as well as those quad muscles tightening, making sure that they're flexing and functioning properly. Again, these are attached to the lunges, so you do 2 sets of 15 repetitions for these on each leg. Again, we want to make sure that these are nice and controlled, and also make sure that the item that you're stepping up on is not too high. We want to make sure that the knee is parallel to the hip. It should not be extending over the hip. The knee should not be overextended beyond the hip plate. Jumping into our final superset of the lower body, we are combining the hip hinges with seated step-ups. Now with the hip hinges, these are generally slower than the last 2 supersets. And these are 3 sets of 12 to 15. Here we are trying to pinch those glute muscles together. So as we're pushing up through the hip, we're trying to pinch those glute muscles together. And we want to make sure that we're engaging those hamstring muscles as well as we drive up. From there, we go into our seated position, into the seated step-ups. Again, similar to the single leg step-ups, we want to make sure that both motions are controlled, going up as well as coming down. These shouldn't be any jerking motions. We should be exploding out of the heel, pushing off, and then making sure that as we're contracting and coming back, we're engaging that core. We're making sure that the glutes are engaged. We're making sure that the quadricep muscles are engaged, and we're also making sure that the hamstring areas are engaged. We want to target all large muscle groups in this particular superset, making sure that we're generating enough power and force throughout the lower extremities and making sure that these are nice and controlled movements. We want to make sure that all muscle groups are engaged fully. We want to make sure that all muscle groups are active, and we also want to make sure that we're feeling the full benefits of the strength and power that we're trying to build and maintain within the lower body group. Now, make sure that you are not dropping your foot down. However, do so if needed. From here, we move into our cool down, which includes 2 nice core exercises, and we're going to do 3 sets of intervals, starting off with the plank, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds of rest. Make sure that the butt is not overly elevated over top of the shoulder blades. Make sure that everything is aligned, shoulders are nice and relaxed, core is engaged, and make sure that you're breathing throughout the process. After you've rested for your 30 seconds and you've cycled through your intervals, head straight into your mountain climbers. You'll continue the same thing for 30 seconds. 30 seconds on, 30 seconds of rest. Congratulations.